It's always hard to time that thing just right. I wonder if we got the deer in the headlights look just before the fanfare. Anyway, hi, I'm Tristan Jutra.
I'm Will Silver.
And this is Momentous Live, episode 154. Let's just say things out of order because, why not? Nothing matters.
Sure.
How's it going, Will?
Good. Right. I'm pretty well these days. How about you?
Fantiddlyastic. We're missing Tasia. Who knows when she'll be back? We're missing Gray. Not sure what he's up to. So we're just going to forge on ahead. And if you want to find out more about us, you can check us out at www.momentous.tv. Let's start with a little bit of a follow-up. You ready for follow-up?
Let's do it to it.
Okay. Boom. So our good friend, as we heard last fall, our friend of the show, Sam Bankman-Fried, was the CEO of FTX, the actually reasonably well-branded cryptocurrency exchange. They had a good thing going. They even sponsored an arena. They had naming rights to an arena. They seemed to have it together, but as it turns out, behind the scenes, they did not have it together, and there was a lot of shenanigans. And said shenanigans have just recently resulted in a lawsuit, a number of lawsuits, some tattletaling from some people who decided to cooperate with the authorities. And ultimately, we got some guilty verdicts. And now Sam Bankman-Fried, who is in charge of the works, has been sentenced to 25 years for fraud, for 7 counts of conspiracy and fraud charges.
Mm-hmm. And, well earned.
Yeah. So we'll see if if it's going to be a club fed kind of situation, white collar, white collar prison institution. Is it going to be? I don't think he's going to be in with the hardcores necessarily. And quite honestly, if he behaves himself, which I trust he will. This isn't like a hardened criminal type of person, more just I think someone who thought they were smarter than everyone else. He'll probably get out early for good behavior. But and then because one of the recent developments with all this is the crypto markets kind of bounced back, and it seems like a lot of the people who lost out may be made whole again, but that doesn't really matter because
it doesn't. It doesn't stop that he committed a crime,
exactly.
So that doesn't matter at all.
So anyway, just a quick little update on that chapter has come to a close, and we'll see if there'll be any appeals or if he's just going to shuffle off into obscurity for a little while, and then I'm personally waiting for the dramatization and or documentary on this, just like we saw with Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos. We've seen dramatizations of the WeWork story. We crashed. There's not so much in the way of dramatic lawsuits there, but it's kind of fun. We're living in an interesting era of business-related, documentaries and dramatizations, including one, Dumb Money, which came out last year, all about the whole GameStop and meme stocks sort of thing going on, which was kind of fun too. I don't know if we talked about that as a momentous.
No, I wanted to watch that, but I never ended up seeing it.
Yeah. Well, I'll make it a pick, and we'll talk about it more in depth in the future.
Sure.
In the meantime, let's get on to just a little bit more follow-up. Yahoo is buying Artifact. So we talked about Artifact about a year ago, which was the AI news app that was started by the co-founders of Instagram. The idea was sort of going to be like a TikTok for news. And it turns out there just wasn't that much of a market for it, so they shut it down, as we reported last month. Sounds like now, however, Yahoo is purchasing the remnants of Instagram for an undisclosed sum. You may be familiar with the name Yahoo, one of the poster children of the .com bubble back in the 90s, but Yahoo is still around, and people still use Yahoo for email, but quite a lot of Yahoo is news nowadays. People aren't using Yahoo search quite so much, but it is quite a news hub still. And so the idea here is that Yahoo will be able to use Artifact in some form to tap into Yahoo's 185 million users, which is nothing to sneeze at. Probably a darn sight more users than Artifact gained on its own. So we'll see what the next chapter for Artifact will be. A little bit. What do you use for news, for consuming news online, Will?
Um, I don't know. I mean, I find out a lot of stuff through Instagram, honestly, and then I just kind of Google individual news items. I think I just sort of hear something's happening and then I Google it. I also watch the news.
But
I'm like one of the
but
last people
okay.
that actually watches TV.
Mm-hmm.
So I watch CBC or CNN. So don't judge me. But yeah, no, I watch one of those news sources, and yeah, that's sort of how I watch things.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. It's like, okay, well, how do you hear about things in order to Google them? So what you're saying is that
Yeah,
you're picking up on stories from some of the legacy media outlets, such as CBC or CNN, and then you're doing a little bit of digging into stories that interest you.
yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, and
and
I do a lot
and
of
Instagram, which
sports
is
watching
interesting
too.
too. Sorry, say again.
I do a lot of sports
Right.
news is important
Mm-hmm.
to me. So, I mean, I watch TSN, which is basically the ESPN in Canada. And yeah, so yeah, I watch that, and that's how I find out about my sports news and highlights and all that stuff.
What sort of news is coming across Instagram? The first one you mentioned there.
People. Well, for example, today I was on Instagram and I noticed that Joe Flaherty died.
Right.
And I'm a huge fan of his, and that was very sad. But and then I
Of
was like, oh,
SCTV fame and others.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, and he was. I forgot he was in Happy Gilmore. He was
Right.
in one of the Back to the Futures as
Mm-hmm.
well. The second one, I believe. Um, so yeah, I mean, anyways, that's that. I find out about that kind of stuff. If something really is like going crazy, then it tends to go on Instagram. But it's not a very good news source. I'm not trying to sit here and say it's a great news source. I'm just saying that's how I find out about some current happenings or whatever.
Yeah,
Things that are in the zeitgeist kind of stuff.
exactly. I mean, it's still probably it's hard to know because people are sharing what they're sharing and what is the agenda by what they're sharing, and you look on Twitter/X and it's a dumpster fire nowadays, and Threads
Yeah,
has been really careful about trying to not to get too newsy, although as we discussed previously, they might be finally relenting on that. But yeah, I've actually been pretty happy with Apple News. We have Apple News Plus, and so that you can turn on and off various sources there. So you can see, for example, more hard news and less like celebrity gossip, which is terrible, and don't need that in my feeds. Thank you very much. But different strokes. So that's nice. That's nice if you can have options to
yeah,
select your sources and then dig in as you see fit. I just in general, however, and we probably discussed before, there's an inverse correlation between people's amount of news consumption and their happiness. So I try to
yeah,
stay away from just day to day news as much as possible. But if there are sort of significant things going on, doing some deep dives and looking at some investigative reporting and analysis and that kind of stuff, as opposed to just the constant you know cries for attention by all the news and social media platforms, to get us engaged and outraged about whatever's going on from minute to minute. It's going to be especially bad this year for no apparent reason come November. But
yeah,
so anyway, speaking of nothing in particular, just another little bit of follow up. We've talked on and off about the Apple Vision Pro since its launch several weeks ago now, and there's an interesting article in Mashable by Kimberly Gideon, who used it on a flight. That was one of the use cases that some people have been talking about. This would be great to be able to just totally tune out what's going on the flight around you, especially if you could pair it with some noise canceling headphones. You can go from an AR, an augmented reality mode, into full virtual reality mode, so you don't even have to see anything around you. And great way to enjoy some movies and the like. So this little hands-on report from this individual on Mashable, she basically broke it down to. I'll just give the highlights. She said it was a little bit chaotic, but on the good side, it was amazing cinematic virtual experience, surprisingly easy to carry around. there's a pouch that you can buy for it. It's a couple $100, but she said even
Hmm.
without the punch, you got to be careful you don't scratch the outside screen if that matters to you. She said there was a calming app for turbulence. Better than expected battery life. I think they quoted as 2 hours, but some people have been getting more like 3 hours out of it. And you can also carry backup batteries or keep it plugged in if your plane has a power source. And picks up ultra subtle gestures as one of the things that she commented on. So you're not having to wave your arms around like a maniac on a flight. It's pretty because there are downward facing cameras that can pick up your hand movements. She said just there's a little bit of fatigue. The tugging on the eye area, depending on the fit. There's different fits that you can get for the eye cushions that go on your face. And if it's, if it is a little bit heavy, given that it's glass and, the electronics and stuff in there, luckily the battery isn't on there. You have to, keep that on your belt or in your pocket or something like that. She also says it gets dirty easily. This is not so maybe not so much a plane experience, but it's pain in the butt to try and share this device. Because of especially if people have corrective lenses and there's the eye tracking, you have to recalibrate for every person. There's a guest mode on it, but that is one of the challenges if you're trying to share your excitement about, switching a new device like this, that it is quite a bit of friction involved in being able to give people an optimal experience when they're trying it on for themselves. She also noticed when there's low light, there's some tracking errors. So, the lights get dim and there's less contrast for the cameras to be able to see. And of course, we're still missing Netflix, Hulu, and YouTube apps. We can still use those apps through a web browser, and that's great if you've got decent Wi-Fi. But one of the benefits of having, say, if you have YouTube Premium or a Netflix account, I'm not sure about Hulu, but being able to download movies or TV shows and take them with you, and you can't necessarily do that using the website interface for those, which is kind of a bummer. But people are starting to get these out into the world, and trying them out, and I can see how on a plane that might be kind of fun. Like air travel is not great. There is a one feature you have to turn on. She said travel mode, because when you're moving at hundreds of miles per hour, if you try and set up windows around you, they're going to fly off into the distance.
Oh, that's funny.
Same people have experienced this in cars as well, because it knows where you are in space. So you have to turn on travel mode so your windows stay with you.
That's funny.
Interacting with stuff, right? So just
that's
those little
hilarious.
real world things to take into account. One of the other things is where was it there? The mindfulness. If you got turbulence, there's an app. It's a mindfulness app, which some people, you get a little nervous if you're not big on flying, and when you hit turbulence, mindfulness apps can help you center yourself, right? And again, because it covers up your eyes and you're totally in this other environment, it might help you out. She also said it's a little embarrassing to wear because it's still new.
Yeah.
You might attract some unwanted attention. Less so, I think, in the airplane seat, but if you're walking around the airport, that's on you. Some other Apple Vision Pro. Would you wear one of these on if you had the money to burn? Will, could you brave the potential stares and whatever social stigma that might exist to drown out the world on a flight with an Apple Vision Pro?
Absolutely not.
Oh, really? Why is that?
I honestly, I find I don't get much done on a plane anyways. And I just find it'd be too much of a distraction. I would feel a bit self-conscious about it. And honestly, I just like to watch a movie and disconnect. I don't want to have to try to set something up and figure stuff out. And then, honestly, sometimes I just close my eyes, and even if I'm not sleeping, I just sort of relax. I don't need to do stuff on a plane. But yeah, I'm kind of a weirdo. I mean, I used to have to really occupy myself and get a bunch of stuff, but I think I'm getting old. It's just plane flights go pretty quick these days. I mean, most of the flights I've taken recently have been 2 to 5 hours. So, if it's like a 13-hour flight to Asia or a 9-hour flight to Europe or something like that, maybe, but I need more to do. But I find it a 2-hour flight, a 3-hour flight, it takes about half an hour to get up and a half an hour to get down, and then they're taking the food carts in and out, and really you only have about an hour where you're not doing anything, I don't find it that big of a strain, and honestly I do enough stuff as is. I don't mind actually just being disconnected a little bit and not feeling like I have to do stuff. I mean, I used to think, oh man, if I just had a laptop, I get so much stuff done on a plane, and it's just like it's awkward. It's not ideal for doing computer work, and absolutely people do it, but it sounds better than it is, I think.
Well, back to your first point, you're saying just watching a movie. Wouldn't you rather watch a fully immersive movie on a device like this as opposed to the crappy seat back screens with terrible audio and video quality when you can have a much more high res or high fidelity experience like this?
I don't know. I need to be sold on it. I don't. I don't really want the hassle.
All right.
Yeah. It's already a compromised experience as is. You're on a plane and it's, there's going to be some dude next to you and like,
shut out the world, man. That's what I'm getting at here. Like I rarely use the in-flight entertainment on planes because they are so terrible. So, and then, if you do enjoy anything, usually on one's own laptop or iPad personally. But like this is just another way to like have a better entertainment experience. If you, to your point, if you've got a long enough flight. Again, haven't bitten the bullet on anything like this yet. I haven't flown in probably almost 10 years. So
what? Really?
Yep.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Well, maybe
you're not
that's
missing much.
Yeah, I know, right? Okay. Speaking of Apple Vision, there's a Vision OS 1.1 update. Now lets you lets Apple Vision Pro personas float freely across different apps. So the personas were initially for FaceTime calls, but now they are starting to allow you to use the personas that you can create by scanning yourself with the device, and they've improved the quality of them. Now we can have shared, collaborative workspaces. Like there's this little video that was provided online where you've got this sort of whiteboard sort of experience where multiple people can interact with the whiteboard and talk to each other and look at each other and all that sort of stuff as if you're sitting around a boardroom table. So a little different than we've seen in the past from Meta with their metaverse stuff in people's cartoon sort of avatars. So there was the realism, which is getting better and better, but then also the whole fact that because these personas are getting more realistic and you're actually looking at each other and it knows which way you're facing, plus the ability to collaborate in a whiteboard type environment, represents an interesting opportunities for the potential future of collaboration for people who aren't getting back into offices either all the time or at all. We'll again back to you on this sort of thing. The hassle of setup aside, generally speaking, you set these things up once, you build your space, cool. If you're working from home and had the ability to collaborate with it, I mean, given the advances we've seen in just the last few weeks with that Apple Vision OS, what are your thoughts on the potential of these sorts of tools that they are building?
Yeah, no, I'm not against the Apple Vision Pro if you're like, at home and setting up a meeting or something. Mm-hmm. It's more like on the go. I just don't see much of a point to it. But again, I've never used it. It's still in its proto stage, I think it's fair to say. It's essentially being beta tested in the wild. I mean, I think like, let's just see how it goes. I mean, I'm not convinced that it's a great experience, but I also have never used it. And I think people are still figuring out how to use the thing. Anyways, yeah. So that's my thing is like, I'm not against it. I just haven't been shown how I could use it kind of thing. Right.
Well, Apple is drip, trying to show us more and more of how this might make sense in one's productivity workflow. So what they're calling the specific feature is spatial personas. And one of the other aspects of it is that it uses spatial audio so that the voices are coming from where they are appearing in your headset. And you turn your head, and it all, like if you have any experience with spatial audio with the AirPods Pro and like that kind of thing, but with you're talking to folks, and so yeah, interesting just to see this. If it will gain enough critical mass, or if it'll just be like a niche sort of thing. Speaking of Apple, we go from good Apple to a little bit of maybe quote unquote bad Apple here. So you may recall last fall, the Apple and Jon Stewart parted ways. They did 2 seasons of The Problem with Jon Stewart, and it was not renewed for a 3rd season. And there was some speculation as to why that was. There was some talk of Apple didn't want Jon Stewart to talk about China or maybe AI, and then a few months ago, Jon Stewart returned to host Monday nights on The Daily Show, while the Comedy Central struggles to, I guess Paramount, the production company, struggles to find a permanent replacement host for Trevor Noah. I think that some people would be just like, why doesn't Jon Stewart just take over the whole thing again? But right now, he's here for Monday nights, and they've got guest hosts for the other nights of the week. So on a recent episode of The Daily Show, he hosted the FTC Chair Lina Khan, who during her tenure has been leading the FTC very aggressively against what they consider tech monopolists, be they Amazon, who she actually wrote a paper about back when she was in university. There was a previous case that she inherited against Meta, and they're setting their sights on Apple, Google, and the like, just to try to keep what they allege to be monopolists in check. Now, we talked a bit last week with the Department of Justice story and their filing against Apple, claiming that their monopoly. But again, as we discussed, so much of is how you frame the market, and a lot of these companies are monopolies per se, but they could be part of a duopoly or an oligopoly when there's various large big tech players. But people aren't going to feel super duper like sympathetic for big tech, especially given the frustrations we all have with them from time to time. But one of the interesting things that came out in this interview with Lina Khan, just almost in passing initially, was the allusion to why he and Apple parted ways regarding his previous show, and that was. He had mentioned that they didn't want him having her on the show, for one thing.
Yeah,
because of how aggressive the FTC has been under her purview, and they didn't really want him doing shows critical of AI. And that could be because Apple is doing stuff in AI, although it's been pretty close to their vest at the moment. They've got stuff coming. They've been doing stuff in machine learning and chip design for years and years and years, all around that. But they've, as we discussed recently, they've just started to use the actual words or letters AI, or artificial intelligence, in the marketing of the MacBook Air, the M3 MacBook Air, and then of course what we're going to see at WWDC in June will probably be very AI focused. So they're going to be fully in it now. So I guess they didn't think it was a great look to have someone on their own, on their own network, per se, their own platform, like bashing AI too hard. So, I mean, this kind of raises a bit of a sticky situation, Will, talking about, quote unquote, monopolies and these tech companies as they get into the media business. And then there are these kind of like the sort of soft form of censorship, like not official, like First Amendment kind of censorship in the States, like it's the government or something, but just like corporate censorship. You own these properties, and then you start to, you put your thumb on the scale a little bit regarding what you want the various shows to talk about and to not talk about. How do you think this looks for Apple and Jon Stewart and this whole situation?
Well, it doesn't look great for Apple, but I mean, it is their property, so they can say what they want, but it's not really an unbiased show, and they should have been careful about having him if that was part of their concern. I mean, if you're going to have a show like that, you have to kind of open it up to whatever the person wants, right? So I think that's they want the good parts but not the bad parts. You can't tell someone like Jon Stewart what to do. So you kind of got to give them freedom of being able to say things, right? So,
and it would kind of demonstrate more confidence in your own company and brand to do that. You can suffer. You can take a few slings and arrows. One of the issues, I think, in the fall when they parted ways, they didn't renew for a third season, was that some of the speculation was that, maybe Apple would have put up with a bit more if the show actually had better ratings.
Yeah, I mean, this is the other thing I was going to say is I didn't hear good things about the show. No. So I mean, I'm surprised that this is the narrative coming out of it, because I thought that I heard that it wasn't a good show. Like, people told me it's not his best, so.
Yeah, so I think Apple, I don't think is the kind of company that would necessarily publicly comment on that. It's even a worse look to do that. But ultimately, like, we watched both seasons, and it was almost more like homework than anything. Like, we'd watched the Daily Show back in the day, and eventually we stopped because we just couldn't handle like the fact that it was daily. It was like a lot, just to and it was obviously quite funny at times, but with the problem, it was just like the pacing was weird because it was an hour-long show as opposed to half an hour. A lot of the jokes were just really cringe and awkward, and then when you'd have his panel guests on, a lot of times they were just like singing from the same hymn book. Often, like, I didn't find there was enough dissenting opinion when it came to the actual discussions. So it's like, well, that's not that interesting if most people are just agreeing with each other. Some of the best part, I thought, was the interviews that he did. A couple of them were a little gotcha, but generally speaking, he's pretty good at the interviews, and it was pretty fair for the most part. And I thought those were that was the strongest part of the series. But I guess just not enough people were watching. I mean, as few people that are actually watching Apple TV Plus regularly, must have been even a small percentage of that were watching The Problem with Jon Stewart. So now it's starting to come out, and again, like, I guess there's whatever NDA he was under has either expired or he's ignoring to be able to say things like that. I mean, that's not. He's a pretty outspoken guy, so maybe he doesn't care, but it's not a super great look for him either, I think, going on about that. But that's his role as a commentator, not quasi journalist, more of a comedian ultimately. And Lina Khan, heading up the FTC, she's got an agenda as well too. And again, it's big tech's not going to gain a lot of sympathy from folks, so do what you're going to do, but you've got to make your case. And then the FTC hands over to the DOJ to actually file any cases. But so we shall see. Just like a little interesting behind the scenes drama starting to be revealed a little bit there. Other drama that's not so behind the scenes, I think hinted at this a few months ago when it was first announced, but as of today, Google Podcasts is officially gone. Another Google product bites the dust. Another one you can go to killedbygoogle.com to see all the products, mostly software and services and some hardware, that Google has killed over the years. Almost at 300 now in their 25-year history, 26-year history. So it's only in the US so far. It's still available internationally, I think, until June, I believe. There's an article on The Verge saying Google Podcasts is gone, and so is my faith in Google. A lot of people are still sore from when Google killed Google Reader, which was an RSS reader that really helped popularize the way to, RSS as a way to consume blog content, having it all come to you rather than having to go to one website after another. And RSS was never, consumption news hasn't been the same since Google killed Google Reader. In this case, Google Podcasts, I think, was always a bit of a niche player, so I don't think the impact will be quite as big, and that's based on their own numbers. And they're trying to push people into YouTube as an easier place to consume podcasts. I don't buy that personally, because you can't play YouTube like for audio. I think like YouTube doesn't play unless when you're outside of the app on your phone, unless you have Google Premium. So maybe that's the play there, is they're trying to convince more people to pay for Google Premium, and then you could listen or watch podcasts when you're doing others. Because that's the whole point of podcasts, is to be able to listen to them while you're doing other stuff, right? You don't want to have that app open the entire time. So all of this as an excuse to ask you, Will, what app do you use to listen to podcasts?
I just use the Apple Podcast app. It's not great, I know, but I have to be quite honest here. I don't listen to a lot of podcasts anymore. I did. There was a period of time where I did when I was driving to work, but now I don't. I just try to chill out on I walk to work, and I kind of don't listen to anything. Sometimes I listen to loopers. But
so you have a longer commute now because you're walking, but you're listening to fewer podcasts because it's just like the frame of mind you're in when you're walking versus driving.
Yeah, I think it's just like I'm meditating, like I'm not. And I think, part of, for me, sharing maybe a little bit here, I've had some things in my life and I just try to get focused on the day and I don't want to think about stuff. I think about stuff all during the day and I don't want to think about stuff when I have some free time. So, occasionally I'll pop in some thoughts about work or some projects I'm doing. I'm big on using my phone. If I have an idea like, Zombie Quartet, that's a great name for a loop. And it's like, then I'll write it down or something like that. If I have ideas, I'll put them down. But I tend not to do much when I'm walking.
Will,
does that make sense?
Sure, of course. And what could be more meditative on your 45-minute walk to work than listening to podcasts at triple speed?
Yeah. I sometimes I'm sharing with the people at home. Justin and I hang out outside of this podcast, and he sometimes picks me up, and he's got podcasts on at triple speed, and I almost vomit in his car. It makes me sick.
Exposure therapy. You just got to work your way in. So for those the few of you who may still have been using Google Podcasts and are looking for alternatives, we've got a link in the show notes to another Verge article describing some of those alternatives, many of which are cross-platform. If you live the cross-platform lifestyle, maybe switching between Apple and Google products. So Pocket Casts has been around for a long time, is quite popular. They also mention Castbox, Podbean, Podcast Addict, AntennaPod, Spotify. Again, Spotify added podcasts several years ago, and with a big splashy launch with Joe Rogan on there. I think now the deal with Joe Rogan is not exclusive, so I don't think you need to pay for Spotify anymore. And if you're a Joe Rogan fan and want to listen to his stuff, but I think Spotify was encouraging people to listen to podcasts because the more podcasts you listen to on Spotify, the less music you're listening to on Spotify. And Spotify has to pay royalties for the music, and they don't have to pay royalties for most podcasts. So they were just repositioning themselves as an audio app, not merely a music app. That hasn't fully panned out the way that Spotify has expected, as evidenced by the rethinking of some of the exclusive deals and whatnot. But Apple Podcasts continues to be quite popular, of course, and Spotify as well. The app that I've been using for years and years now is called Overcast by an independent developer named Marco Armand. I'm sure I've mentioned it a few times on the show, but it's got some nice, fine, granular controls such as smart speed. So not only just simply increasing the speed in a gross way, just by 1x, 2x, whatever, but it also reduces the gaps. Like if there's any extended silences in a given podcast, it just tightens things up there. And it's amazing how much time you can save with that. Also has voice boost, which is sort of an automatic EQ. And there's a free version, which is ad supported. And then of course you can pay to remove the ads if you like. And there's also, you can pay and keep the ads if you want as well, if you want to do the developer an extra favor. So that's, I was on Apple Podcasts for years and years and then switched to Overcast, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 years ago now. No looking back, but it is only available on iOS devices.
Do you pay for the...
No, I should though. I mean, I've gotten so much value out of it. I should probably just do that if you're shaming me into it.
I think it's more curious than shame, but if you get shame from it, then that's your Catholic guilt.
Yeah. So Guilt just means you've done something wrong. Shame means you're actually a bad person, just so we're clear.
Okay.
So no actual shame.
You're Catholic. You should know.
That old chestnut.
Yes.
So I don't feel unnecessary guilt or shame because I actually have a proper handle on things. So anyhow, despite what the media wants to tell you about certain faith traditions. So anyhow, speaking of Google, it's the 20th anniversary of Gmail, just yesterday, because it was launched on April 1st, 2004. Do you remember all the hubbub at the time, Will?
Yes.
1 gigabyte of storage compared to a lot of the competitors at the time, which were only offering like 15 megabytes of storage. So Gmail was a game changer.
Yeah.
I never signed up for a Gmail account myself because I always self-hosted my email, but that's something that most normal people don't do. And others, competitors did respond over time. I think Hotmail boosted their storage to 200 megs and then eventually more. Yahoo did likewise. But Gmail really gained so much mind share. They approach things a little bit differently as regards email organization. They moved away from folders and more into tagging, which they position as being a bit more sophisticated, and you could actually file things in more than one category that way. It's actually, the interface has actually evolved quite a lot over the years. It's remarkable when you look back at the original version of Gmail, and this Verge article we'll link to in the show notes shows you the difference now. But it's amazing how many services have been tied into Google/Gmail accounts over time, and where you can some things you can only sign into if you have, say, a Google account or an Apple account. Some don't even let you sign up with email nowadays. You're actually using a Gmail account. One of the things that Gmail's been really good at is spam filtering and handling and moving things into separate views. They would have a social tab or they have a focus tab. I sometimes it's easy for stuff to get lost. One of the things I wasn't super keen on Gmail about is the aggressive filterings. Like if you had, as a person who ran your own email server, if you didn't have a whole bunch of stuff set up on your DNS as of a couple of years ago, recipients wouldn't get your messages and you wouldn't get a bounce. It was just like, oh, I never got your message. It's like, well, what is going on? So I guess that's one of the downsides of trying to manage your own email servers is that if you don't keep up to date with these things 100%, sometimes you've got to do a little mop up to try to ensure deliverability of the own email messages that you send from your own server. But one of the concerns that people have always had about using Gmail is giving Google access to the contents of literally every email that you send and receive using your Gmail account. The ability to scan all that stuff, and that informs the kind of ads you get shown over time, and also just being aggregated to help their ultimate clients, which aren't users. Google is, as we know, they're not a search engine company, they're not an email company, they're not a hardware company, they're actually an advertising company. That's still where they get 90+% of their revenue. So, because we like things for free, and we're willing to trade a little bit of privacy for convenience. A lot of people don't necessarily understand what we're trading in terms of privacy for said convenience. We've talked about getting good deals on Roku TVs, for example, while they monitor everything that we watch and sell our data to advertisers. So, Will, what's been your experience with Gmail and its approach, and maybe the whole notion of getting stuff for free and paying in non-monetary ways and so on?
Yeah, I mean, I have to be honest, as you know, I have my own email through a hosting company through my URL. And I also, for all my trash, I tend to use Hotmail.
Oh, yeah. What else is Hotmail for nowadays?
Yeah, exactly. So if I'm entering a contest or something, that's what Hotmail's for. So
I've got 2 levels of Hotmail accounts. I've got my original one for trash, and then I've got a secondary one for super trash.
Yeah.
So I don't clutter up my trash with like super trash.
Super trash, yeah. I do have Gmail, partly because I have YouTube and various things, and they basically, I mean, they make you sign up for it, but I don't really use it very often. There's a couple times I've had to use it because, you know, I I have to use another email because I've already used an email for something. So yeah, so I mean, there's some
Trying to extend
occasions
a
like,
free trial on a product or software
yeah,
or
yeah,
something.
stuff like that. Yeah. So I do have an account and I have used it, but I'm not a Gmail fan. It did feel like there was a time where everyone, like people would maybe find out I had a Gmail account and would automatically just send stuff to my Gmail. I'm like, I don't look at the Gmail account. Like I honestly don't. I will say now I have used it for work. Some workplaces that I've been a part of use it. You know, they purchase the enterprise plan or whatever. So I have had to use it for work. I mean, I'm okay with it, but yeah, I mean, I'm not a huge fan, and I haven't chosen it sort of for my personal life.
So on that theme of free stuff and privacy, there's another story that came out yesterday, and it has to do with a lawsuit, a $5 billion privacy lawsuit that was launched against Google. I believe it was last year. To do with, actually, it was filed in 2020. So that's how quickly justice moves nowadays. And it was basically claiming that Google did not properly disclose to users what the implications of using incognito mode were. So a lot of times, you will fire up incognito mode. Sometimes it's because you want to log into, if you've got multiple accounts with the same service, or if you want to, go to log into or visit a website and not have any cookies retained on your web browser. Or just think people have all sorts of different reasons for using incognito mode, but due to its name and what it says is what it used to say when you launched it, you do Shift Command Tab or Shift Control Tab if you're on Windows. People had this false sense of privacy. Now, the idea is, okay, the websites that you're visiting aren't keeping cookies on your machine once you exit that incognito window or tab. But what Google wasn't saying is that they were still tracking your activity, even if it was in an incognito window. So that that has wound its way through the courts, and I think there was the suit could have required the company to pay $5 billion in damages, but instead of getting $5,000 per user, they're just going to destroy the billions of data points it, quote, improperly collected, update its data collection disclosures, which I believe they did a while ago, because now it's much more clear what privacy mode says, and maintain a setting that blocks Chrome's third-party cookies by default for the next 5 years. So again, to clarify, this is when you're using the Google Chrome browser. And that's what's a little tricky, especially for users that aren't quite so tech savvy. Google is a search engine, but Google Chrome is the web browser from Google, and those Google services and Google Chrome get more and more tightly tied together as time has gone on. So if you want to browse what you think is private, just note that it's not as private as you might think. Maybe a little bit more private than it was in the past, but they collected literally billions of data points, and so they, as part of this lawsuit, will be destroying said data and updating some of their policies and settings options on Google Chrome. Any thoughts? Will, do you ever use incognito mode on Google Chrome or private browsing mode on Safari, which is a little bit different?
Sure, yeah, all the time. Part of the reason is that for web development, it's very useful to sort of clean the slate and just have it so you haven't clicked things already, or it doesn't remember, and you don't necessarily have to go through and clear the history and all that kind of stuff. So it is sort of feels like a bit of well, it's not, doesn't feel like it. It's sort of like an unencumbered view. So in some ways, it's like you're looking at it like someone is just coming on the website or looking
It's a
at
fresh session. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fresh
No
session.
history, no cookies. Yeah. It's like,
so you don't have to go through and delete cookies and delete history, which you might not want to do for multiple reasons. And so, yeah, it's used in web development quite often just to get a fresh view of things.
And just on the Gmail side or on this incognito mode lawsuit side, any thoughts on the nature of the privacy aspects of the data collection, especially for those who are unwitting about it?
I mean, it's sort of like what you said. I think too many people were gung-ho and didn't think too much about what they were getting as a result. And it's unfortunate, but, things like data breaches and other things have shown that they were looking at a lot of data. There was a lot of cookies and stuff that were quite invasive. So they have a whole history of that kind of stuff. So it's definitely, to quote Team America World Police, freedom isn't always free. So free isn't always free. Let's put it that way. So someone's paying for it. And you're, like you say, you're paying for it with your data.
Well, yeah, and that's the whole thing. We've been saying for years and years now, and like you and I, teaching various courses in digital media, if you're getting for something for free, it's become a truism at this point, or a cliche. It's like you're not the customer, you're the product. And ultimately, your data is the product. And if that's a trade you're willing to make, sure. Like we all, have it's a spectrum, right? We're all willing to trade a certain amount of time, money, data, et cetera, for convenience. So it's just a question of what. Now, if you look at it from a socioeconomic point of view, it's a little rough because people who are not as affluent and don't spring for the premium services to protect their privacy, they enjoy the benefits of free services, but then they're paying for it more with the privacy and exposure to potential data breaches and the like. And to be fair, Google is pretty buttoned down when it comes to data security, so I'm not too concerned that way. But it's just a question of how open are people's eyes to these things when they and if you're not sure, if you're out there listening, watching, and you hear about some cool sounding new free product or service, talk to your tech friends about it and see what's the catch, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty buttoned down, but also they were sending a feed straight to the U.S. government at one point of everything that you had. So I mean, this is what happens when you give someone your data. That it's you are trusting them, and that's why that whole thing was quite upsetting. With what was the guy's name who ended up defecting to Russia?
Edward Snowden.
Exposed, and obviously there was a lot of bad things about what he did, but did show that they were basically copying everything in your Gmail and copying all your history and copying a bunch of stuff. And I always like to pretend like, what was the meeting like at the NSA or the FBI or whatever it was, or the CIA? It's like, does anyone have any more matters to discuss? Yeah, Jim, over there. Yeah. I think we should back up the whole internet. And it's like, okay, the whole internet? So yeah, it's like they basically just had like a pipeline going straight from Google.
Yeah, I don't recall those specific details of when those revelations came out, but he has certainly been a critic of some of Google's practices over time. But yeah,
look into it. They had a backdoor.
Yeah.
So
I know that one of the challenges for tech companies is that sometimes when they get requests for data from the various government agencies, and sometimes they're not allowed to say so. That's part of the catch too. If it's deemed, in the interest of national security and like, so that all gets a little bit tricky. I think Google, to their credit, did set up a web page, and it was something. I think it was like something to do with chilling effects, and they would share whenever protects chilling effects from takedown notices. There was a website called chillingeffects.org, and Google was involved with that to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But it is a little tricky when it comes to national security stuff, and there's only so much that tech companies can do, lest they run afoul of the government. But anyway, just remember, when you're getting something for free, or even if you're paying for things, look at the fine print. How is your data being handled? How can you take ownership of your own stuff as much as possible? But speaking of free will,
yeah.
The free version of ChatGPT no longer requires an account to use it. So that's going to, the idea there is OpenAI announced that they want people to try out ChatGPT and go to town. You don't need to set up a login or anything like that. Again, this is going to be the free version, GPT 3.5. So not nearly as smart as GPT 4, but for a lot of basic stuff, and to give it a whirl, especially if you are a little wary of signing up for more accounts than necessary if you run out of Hotmail accounts, for example. But we'll link in the show notes about a setting, because you can prevent your conversations from being used to train the model if you wish. There's an option in the settings menu for users, whether they are logged in or not. Now, one of the downsides of not logging in is that you're not necessarily going to be able to hang on to your conversation history. It might for a bit, just thanks to cookies. But if you're switching devices or using incognito windows or the like, you have no recourse to log in and retrieve your conversation history, which can be very handy to look at past interactions with the chatbot. So there you go. I mean, you've got a free account already for ChatGPT, Will, right? So
yeah,
this doesn't really affect you. But so I know some people may have been a little wary for whatever reason. But just if you're concerned about data, just turn off the option to have your interactions training their model. Mm-hmm. Speaking of things being killed, like a Google Reader, just another little side. So I was hoping, I've been hanging on to this one for a little bit. We didn't get a chance to talk about it actually it was just after last week. No Gray today, but BBC exterminate AI experiments used to promote Doctor Who. So this is something that we've seen more and more of, with some fans getting a little uppity about companies using AI, especially in creative industries, to promote products, shows and the like, or using remember the controversy last year about Secret Invasion, the Disney Plus Marvel series, and they used AI in the creation of the opening credits. There was all sorts of uproar about that. Well, this is a case. This wasn't even in the production of the show, but it was just production of some of the images promoting the show. Some of the promotional materials, and there was a fan outcry about it, and the production company backed down. But just for fun, some folks at the Register were playing around and doing mashups of Doctor Who, and Star Trek, and Star Wars imagery. But what do you think about this, Will? I mean, fans obviously have the right to say whatever they want about their beloved franchises, but do you think this is righteous outrage, or is it a little overblown?
I don't know. I'm a bit of. I think it's dependent. I do actually appreciate if people are like, hey, these are people's jobs. I think we're still working out the whole thing. So I think it's still early days. So in some ways, it's not a bad sentiment that they care about people's jobs and stuff like that. The other thing, the other part to it, I kind of think is that it did kind of make sense with Secret Wars in some way, like thematically, and also the imagery kind of worked. So I didn't hate it on that, to be quite honest, because it kind of fit. But yeah, I think I do actually appreciate, because you and I have this philosophy that you should pay for things. So I actually appreciate that people are standing up for people. So I do appreciate it. It's kind of weird in some ways that it also is also treading on kind of development in the next generation of technology.
Yeah, and the question is, I mean, is it really taking people's jobs, or is it just giving the people who are doing these
Well, we're
jobs
not
different
sure
tools
yet.
to use,
Yeah,
right? Like
yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah,
but some of the some of the quotes just seem a little bit much, quite honestly.
yeah.
Folks behind the Doctor Who companion website declared themselves absolutely disgusted at BBC's intention to use AI to create some promos. And because there was a press release from BBC thinking, I mean, this is like, I guess, not reading the room properly,
Yeah.
about the fan base, but they had a press release talking about what they were thinking of doing, and they were going to take it one step at a time, et cetera, et cetera. But nope. People like went from 0 to 60 and lit their hair on fire very quickly, which I don't know, man. Like,
That doesn't sound like people at all.
yeah, it's like, well, were they that upset? They started using Photoshop. Like, really? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
anyhow, continuing. So another thing exterminated. Speaking of, keeping with our theme about killing stuff. I just wanted to share that trailer that I stumbled across today, Will, for
Yes.
a new movie starring Bill Skarsgård, one of the many Skarsgårds out there, and Famke Jensen. I haven't seen her in anything for a while, but wasn't she in X-Men, one of the
Was.
X-Men
Yeah.
movies?
Yeah, she
So
was Jean Grey.
yeah, so this is called Boy Kills World. Now I'd seen the Red Band trailer, so the uncensored trailer, which was pretty over the top. But basically, the synopsis, as according to the Internet Movie Database, a dystopian fever dream action film that follows Boy, a deaf person with a vibrant imagination. When his family is murdered, he is trained by a mysterious shaman to repress his childish imagination and become an instrument of death. It's pretty wild. Like if you like action movies and don't get squeamish about ultra violence, I suppose it might be up certain folks' alley. The Red Band trailer gives a lot more indication of what it's like. It's almost like, it feels there's some echoes of Deadpool maybe in there. It's an interesting cast. I think that Charlotte Copley, Charlton Copley, who was people know from District 9. He's in it as well. What were your thoughts? Brett Gelman, who people might recall, he's in Stranger Things among other shows. What were your thoughts when you watched this trailer today, Will?
Yeah, I mean, it's got a lot of dystopian tropes, but it is nice to see something that's original. As much as I like Marvel and Star Wars and other things, it is nice to see an attempt to do something new. It certainly is playing off traditions like, Kill Bill and Hunger Games and Running Man and stuff like
Yeah, I
that.
got some Running Man vibes from it too. Yeah,
Yeah,
just like to the extreme.
yeah, but I mean, at the same time, I like all those movies, and it's a
Mm-hmm.
bit of a fresh take. I mean, that's sort of what Harry Potter was when it came out. Is that it was, yeah, there was a lot of like rehashed myth and legend, but there was also a new framework around it. So,
Mm-hmm.
I think it looks really interesting. I'm actually really keen on it. We'll have to check it out.
That's because you're a sick mofo.
Yes, indeed.
So we'll go and support our purveyors of ultra violence in the theaters as we just let the world burn.
Sounds good.
So yeah, you can check out if you're interested. If that sounds like it's up your alley, folks, Boy Kills World. You can check it out at IMDb or search YouTube for the Red Band trailer if you want to see more gore. Speaking of gore, the first Alien Romulus trailer looks creepy, gory, and excellent, according to Gizmodo. Now, I believe this was a friend of the show, Jerome's pick for most anticipated movie of the year. So this is being directed by Fede Alvarez, who directed the reboot of Evil Dead. And the trailer for this, it's not necessarily like your typical Alien franchise movie trailer. It's more, it really kind of leans into the horror aspect of things. And we may recall the original Alien movie was sort of a survival horror sci-fi, kind of like more so than say Aliens, which was a bit more military alien adventure kind of thing. But the original Alien movie had like pretty strong horror vibes to it, but this one just, it seems like they're just leaning into it more. Have you had a chance to,
You
from
know
what you've
what?
seen so far?
I didn't check that one out, I have to
Uh-huh.
admit. But I mean, I am already sort of all in on that movie. So I mean, I like the Aliens franchise. So I am looking forward to it for sure.
Yeah, I just hope it sort of leans into what made the first couple of Alien movies especially great, and not what made the Alien versus Predator movies mostly terrible.
Yeah, yeah.
Interestingly, I think this takes place chronologically between the first and second Alien movie.
Mm.
So that's and I think it comes out in August 16th, which doesn't make me super optimistic, frankly, because late August tends to be a bit of a dumping ground for
Yeah.
movies. You remember Blue Beetle, for example. Just
Did I talk about that movie? I can't even remember. I liked it.
we I think we talked about it a bit. I don't think we saw that one together. Yeah,
No.
it was fine, but it was definitely like B or C tier
Yeah.
for was
It
it
was a
Marvel or
bit paint
DC?
by numbers, as they
Yeah,
say.
yeah, and it had some interesting things. It was fine, but yeah, hopefully this defies mid to late August expectations. That's all I'm hoping
Yeah,
for.
sure.
Let's move to our momentous picks, shall we? Will and something that we saw this together, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
Yeah, in glorious IMAX, and that
Indeed.
is, what is your pick this week?
It is Dune 2, Electric Boogaloo.
Nice. I love the dance routines.
Yes. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I thought it was just absolutely visually stunning. The sound design and soundtrack were amazing. IMAX is definitely the way to see it. I enjoyed the story, and the acting was quite good. So I really enjoyed this movie quite a bit. I have unfortunately talked to a few friends of mine that are huge Dune fans, and were disappointed about a couple things. My brother is a massive Dune fan. He actually did like it, but he did point out that there were some things different. Luckily, he's able to compartmentalize things and
Mhm.
understand that you can't do everything in a movie and that you have to make some sacrifices. So he's okay with it, but I've talked to some other people that are really disappointed by a few things. But Dune fans are notoriously picky. I, as someone who has not read the books, I really did enjoy this, and it was absolutely a masterwork. I did, if I'm being super nitpicky, and I said this to you at the time, I felt like it was a bit rushed at the end. I felt like the final sequence kind of went by too quickly. So, I mean, if I'm nitpicking anything, it's that.
I've got to agree for the most part. I too really enjoyed Dune Part Two, and it was a fitting installment in the Dune series. It's one of those things like I've since heard that there's going to be a Part Three, but at some point. But apparently Denis Villeneuve, the director, is in no rush to make that happen. But Part Two basically rounds out the first book. So the difference being in the 1984 Dune, directed by David Lynch, he just sped run through, or speed ran, whatever the plural of
Yeah.
speed run is, or the past tense of speed run is, through the first book in a single movie, which and that you're going to have some compromises. So the nice thing is Villeneuve got between 5 and 6 hours to tell the story here.
Yeah.
More along the lines of what we saw from, like, there's a mini series in the early 2000s starring William Hurt, which had a bit more benefited from a bit more leisurely pace as well. And some people feel it's more true to the original books. Again, I have not read the books myself, but friend of the show Dave has, and he's quite a fan of both of the Dune movies so far. And part of it is just like we have directors like Villeneuve and Christopher Nolan who are just big on cinema, right? The
Mhm.
spectacle, the sights, the sounds, really big believers in getting people out of their homes and into theaters to really enjoy what movies can be. And it's nice to have that. I mean, sure, we're always going to have streaming, and there's going to be some stuff that goes direct to streaming, and you can usually tell by the quality. But so to have the certain epics like this still coming out on a reasonably regular basis, it sort of makes me optimistic for the future of film. And it's not like it's super duper intellectual stuff, but some people may grade it a notch above your typical say superhero fare, which we love as well.
Yes,
even when it's terrible. So
we love movies. We love movies. That's the thing.
So a wholehearted here on your momentous pick this week. Well, my pick this week a little different. It's more of on our theme of like just killing things. Sisu, which apparently came out in 2022, but came to my attention more recently on streaming. And the premise here is fun. Is when an ex-soldier who discovers gold in the Lapland wilderness tries to take the loot into the city, Nazi soldiers led by a brutal SS officer battle him. So kind of like Boy Kills World, there's some over-the-top violence in this movie. And of course, kind of like people don't mind you beating up on big tech, people don't mind heroes killing Nazis, right? It's kind of like the universally accepted people that you can just dispatch with as you or dispense with as you see fit. And so this is set in Finland, and there are subtitles, but it was a well done movie, and a little brutal at times, some over the top violence, but just well constructed. It didn't overstay its welcome. Some genuine tension, some pretty decent and visceral action scenes. Didn't overplay its hand, and didn't overstay its welcome. And it was I thought it was good, and you might even enjoy it too, Will, if you enjoy killing some Nazis once in a while.
Oh, I enjoy Nazis being killed. I mean, I don't kill them myself, but
not with the necessary.
Yeah,
glorious carnage is one way one outlet described it. So, and so if you're ever wondering where you can watch these things, I think we've mentioned it before. Justwatch.com is a great website. And if you're in Canada, it's justwatch.com/CA. And I think was it on Prime Video that I saw it? Yeah. It was on Crave. Yeah. So I saw that on Crave. So in the States, it may be a little different. So that's my momentous pick is Sisu.
Cool. I'll have to check it out.
Do it. Does your lovely wife, does she enjoy?
Oh, she hates violence. I'm problem with violence. I'm fine with violence, but she does not like violence.
Well, one person whose opinion on violence we're not really clear on, but she's violently breaking our hearts for months and months and not having joined us, is Tasia Custodi. But she has another Google video for us on little known Google search tips. So you can see all of Tasia's work at www.tasiacustodi.com or youtube.com/Tasia Custodi. And speaking of Tasia, she and I have our own show on the side called AI Named This Show. And this most recent episode is on Microsoft's quest for AI bliss. Some of the moves that Microsoft's been making both in the public-facing and behind the scenes to continue to solidify their leadership role in the whole heated battle for AI supremacy nowadays. And you can find out more about our show at www.ainamedthisshow.com. And of course, if you want to follow us here at Momentous, you can join us at momentous.tv, www.momentous.tv, where you can follow us on your podcast platform of choice. Check out the latest videos on YouTube, etc., etc. So that's it.
Cool.
We did it well.
Nice.
We stuck the landing. Not too long. Just over an hour and 9 minutes. I think we can put a feather in our cap for that one. We could have been longer, but we tried to keep it tight.
No, it's good. It's good.
We had to kill some darlings. Again, keeping it on theme. We're always killing darlings, so we can't cover every story.
Hey, don't tell them behind the scenes.
But until we see you, whenever our next episode may be, maybe next week, maybe never, who knows?
Oh, hey.
we hope your week, your month, your year are truly momentous.